The street looked blue under the fire truck lights, and cold water ran along the curb in black ribbons. I sat on the grass with an oxygen mask against my mouth. Soot stuck under my fingernails. Across the driveway, the two people who had slept downstairs held each other for the firefighters. The alarms failed, one of them said. We tried to get her out. A neighbor stopped crying. A firefighter stopped writing. I lifted my hand toward the upstairs window. My fingers shook once, behind the cracked glass. The fresh marks around the frame caught the light. A yellow evidence tag fluttered against the wet lawn. My name is Natalie Reed, and I learned early that some houses do not have to be locked to feel like traps. I grew up outside Columbus, in a 2-story house with green shutters, a sagging porch, and a basement that smelled like damp cardboard. My father fixed everything himself: loose railings, sticking doors, drafty windows. He carried a hammer the way other men carried keys, clipped to his belt, ready to prove the house still needed him. People respected that about him. They saw a hard-working man who patched roofs for neighbors, shoveled sidewalks without being asked, and never let a fence lean for more than a week. They did not see how his voice could make a room shrink. My mother worked the welcome table at church every Sunday. She wore soft cardigans, remembered birthdays, and touched people's arms when she spoke. If I ever tried to tell anyone how things felt inside our home. She smiled sadly and said, "Natalie has always remembered things heavier than they were." That sentence followed me for years. My younger brother, Brandon, never had to remember anything correctly. When he failed classes, he was overwhelmed. When he wrecked my father's truck, he was young. When his little garage business started bleeding money, he was ambitious. My mistakes became character flaws. His became weather. The only person who never corrected my memory was my grandmother, Evelyn. She lived 20 minutes away in a small brick ranch with yellow curtains and a kitchen that smelled like cinnamon gum. When things got too tight at home, she let me sleep on her couch and left a quilt folded over the armrest. She never asked me to explain before she believed me. 3 weeks before the fire, we buried her under a gray sky. After the funeral, I stayed at my parents' house to help sort her boxes. My old bedroom still sat at the top of the stairs, smaller than I remembered, with faded tape marks where my high school posters used to hang. At night, the window glass clicked softly in the cold. Inside one of Grandma's boxes, I found a folder with my name on it, trust papers, payments, bills, notes in her thin handwriting. Some numbers did not match. Some withdrawals were round and too neat. One line pointed toward Brandon's garage. At dinner, I said I was calling a lawyer in the morning. My father set down his fork. My mother folded her napkin. That night, I heard the first tap of his hammer outside my bedroom window. By morning, the house had gone polite. My father poured coffee like nothing had happened. My mother sliced toast into triangles and asked if I wanted jam. Brandon scrolled on his phone at the table, grinning at something he would not share. The folder was gone from my bag. I found it missing when I reached for my keys. The zipper sat half open. The inside pocket had been turned out, carefully. The way someone searches without wanting to look guilty. My father watched me from the sink. Lose something. I looked at his hands. Clean nails. No coffee cup. No tremor. I need that folder. He dried one plate. Slowly. "You need rest," my mother said. "Grief makes people suspicious." Brandon laughed under his breath. "Here we go." I did not argue. I had learned that arguing in that house only gave them extra words to use against me later. Upstairs, I checked my phone. The photos I had taken of Grandma's papers were still there. I sent them to Maya, my co-worker in Columbus, with one line, "If I don't call tomorrow, send these to Karen Holt." The message spun, no signal, outside. The wind pushed dry leaves across the roof. Somewhere below my room, my father's tools clinked. That afternoon, he walked the hallway with a caulk gun and a small box of supplies. "Cold snap tonight," he said. "Old windows swell. Don't fight them." He said it lightly, but he looked at the frame too long. I tried the latch after he left. It shifted, then stopped. The glass gave a dull little knock in its track. At dinner, I said I was still going to see the lawyer. My mother's fork paused above her plate. "That woman will put poison in your head." She's an elder law attorney, I said. She's a stranger, my father said. We're your family. Brandon pushed back from the table. You come home for 2 days and act like you're auditing everyone. That night, voices rose below me. Before she finds out, the trust. Brandon can't survive another investigation. Then my mother, sharp and low. She won't stop. I stood barefoot beside my bed, phone in my hand. The message to Maya still had not sent. Near midnight. Smoke slid under my bedroom door in a thin gray line. I ran to the window. It did not move. The smoke made the room smaller. It came in low at first, thin as breath, then thick enough to hide the floor. I grabbed my sweatshirt from the chair and pressed it over my mouth. The fabric tasted like detergent and ash. The hallway outside my door glowed orange at the bottom. I turned back to the window and shoved with both palms. Nothing. I hit the frame with my shoulder. Pain shot down my arm. The glass rattled, but the sash stayed fixed, hard and dead in its track. My nails scraped the paint. Something rough bit into my skin. Across the yard, a porch light snapped on. Mrs. Delgado stood in her robe, one hand at her throat. I struck the glass again. Help me. My voice came out torn and thin. She disappeared from the porch. A second later, I saw the glow of a phone at her ear. The room coughed around me. My eyes streamed. I could hear my own breathing, fast and wet. And somewhere below, the deep crack of wood giving way. I screamed until my throat ripped. The window won't open. They sealed it. I can't get out. Red lights washed over the ceiling before I heard the sirens. Boots hit the stairs. Men shouted through the smoke. A gloved hand found mine. Cold air broke over my face like water. Then I was on the lawn. A silver blanket scratched my shoulders. An oxygen mask covered my mouth. I tried to sit up, but the world tilted. Near the driveway, my mother sobbed into my father's coat. The smoke alarms failed. She told a firefighter. We tried to save her. My father put one hand over his eyes. She panics, he said. She says things when she's scared. I tried to speak. Only a burned whisper came out. My mother looked at me with wet eyes and a warning in them. At the hospital, they stayed close to my bed. Too close. My father answered questions before I could. My mother told the nurse I was under terrible stress from Grandma's death. Then Maya walked in, still wearing her badge from the lab. My phone buzzed in her hand. The message had finally sent. She read it once, looked at my parents, and stepped back into the hall. By morning, Karen Holt was beside my bed with a legal pad. Do you want them speaking for you? I shook my head. For the first time. Someone wrote that down. The fire marshal's office did not look like a place where families broke apart. It looked like a county building no one had updated since the 90s. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, a vending machine humming in the corner, a framed safety poster hanging crooked near the door. I sat at a metal table with Karen Holt on my left and a paper cup of water in front of me. My throat still felt raw. Every swallow scraped. Across from me, my parents sat close together. My mother wore a cream sweater and held a tissue folded into a neat square. My father wore his work jacket, the same brown canvas one he used when neighbors asked him to fix porch steps or loose gutters. Brandon sat behind them, knees spread, jaw tight, tapping one thumb against his phone. Marcus Hill, the investigator, walked in carrying a thin folder. He did not look angry. That scared my parents more than anger would have. He sat down, clicked on a recorder, and said, "Let's go through the timeline." My father leaned forward. Of course. His voice was steady, helpful, respectable. The voice people believed. Marcus asked when the smoke alarms were last checked. My father said the house was old, but he kept up with maintenance. Marcus asked who was home. My mother said all of us. Marcus asked why I was sleeping upstairs alone. My mother touched her chest. That's her old room. She wanted space. She's been grieving. Karen wrote something down. Marcus looked at my father. You did work around that room earlier that evening, Drafts, my father said. Cold snap came in. Old windows swell. Anyone who works on houses knows that. Marcus did not blink. Only that room. My father's mouth paused before the answer. That room was the worst. I stared at his hands. They looked clean now. No dust, no cuts, no proof. Just the same hands that had fixed neighbors' mailboxes and carried offering plates at church. Marcus opened the folder and slid 3 photographs onto the table. I did not look at them long. I did not have to. My father did. His face changed by a fraction. Marcus tapped one photo. These marks were fresh. My mother made a soft sound. They could be from anything, my father said. Marcus tapped the second photo. The wear does not match the rest of the frame. He tapped the third, and the issue was not swelling. The room went quiet except for the vending machine motor. Brandon stopped tapping his phone. My mother leaned forward. Natalie was terrified. She misunderstood. She says things when she's overwhelmed. Marcus turned to her. That's why we reviewed the 911 call. My mother went still. The recorder on the table kept running. Marcus pressed play on a small speaker. First came static, then Mrs. Delgado's voice, thin and shaking. There's smoke next door. Someone's upstairs. I can hear her. A dispatcher asked for the location. Mrs. Delgado kept crying. She's at the window. Oh, God, she's hitting the glass. Then my voice came through. Not clear, not strong, but there. The window won't open. They sealed it. I can't get out. My mother covered her mouth. My father looked down. Brandon whispered, Jesus. Marcus stopped the recording. No one moved. For years. My mother had been able to tilt her head and tell people I remembered things wrong. For years. My father could stay calm enough to make my shaking look like guilt, but the recording did not shake. It did not apologize. It did not forget. Karen placed another paper on the table. Natalie had an appointment scheduled with me for the following morning. My father looked up sharply. Karen continued. She contacted a coworker with photos of trust documents, payments, and bills she believed needed review. Some of those records involve round withdrawals and expenses tied to Brandon Reed's business. Brandon stood halfway. I didn't know where that money came from. Karen looked at him. Then why did you text your father? If Natalie checks the trust, we're done. His face emptied. My mother turned toward him, Brandon. He sat down slowly. My father's calm finally cracked. This is a family matter. Marcus closed the folder. A fire with a trapped occupant is not a family matter. That was the first time I saw fear land on my father and stay there. A few weeks later, the courtroom felt colder than the fire marshal's office. My voice had healed enough to speak, but it still came out rough if I used it too long. My mother arrived dressed like Sunday morning, pale coat, small cross at her throat, eyes damp before anyone said a word. My father walked beside her, shaved clean, shoulders squared. Brandon kept behind them. He looked smaller without a garage shirt, without a joke, without my parents' certainty protecting him. Their attorney called it a tragic misunderstanding. He said the smoke alarms had failed. He said my parents had tried to save me. He said grief had made me suspicious, and fear had made my memories unreliable. I listened. My hands stayed flat on the table. Karen did not interrupt. Then the evidence began again. Mrs. Delgado testified first. She said she heard me screaming before the firefighters arrived. She said she saw my hands striking the upstairs window. She said she heard me yell that I could not get out. Her voice broke once. Then she looked at me. I heard her, she said. I knew what I heard. The 911 recording played next. The whole room listened to me scream. No one coughed. No one shifted. Even the judge looked down at the transcript longer than necessary. Then Marcus Hill explained the window frame. He did not dramatize it. He did not need to. He said the marks were recent. He said the condition of that window did not match the explanation given at the scene. He said the work appeared limited to the room where I had slept. My father stared straight ahead. My mother cried quietly. Brandon kept his eyes on the floor. Karen rose last. She did not call my parents monsters. She did not raise her voice. She built the room brick by brick. The missing folder, the trust documents, the appointment with her office, the message to Maya, the payments, the bills, the text from Brandon. Then she looked at the judge and said, "They did not only try to discredit what happened after the fire, they began discrediting her before anyone smelled smoke." My mother stood suddenly. She has always twisted things. She cried. We loved her. We tried to help her. The judge told her to sit. I turned and looked at her. For once, she could not soften the room around herself. I stood when Karen touched my arm. My voice scratched, but it held. "You told them I was confused because you needed everyone to forget I was trapped." My father closed his eyes. I kept going. "You called my fear grief. You called my memory unstable, but someone heard me before you could change the story." The judge granted the protective orders. My parents were barred from contacting me. Access to the remaining trust was frozen pending review. Brandon's finances would be examined. The fire investigation would continue under a more serious classification. It was not over, but their version of it was. Outside the courthouse, my mother said my name once. Small, careful, like she was testing whether she still owned any part of me. I did not turn around. Behind me, the courthouse doors shut with a clean, heavy sound. After the hearing, the house on the quiet street stopped being a home. Yellow tape crossed the porch. The upstairs window was covered from the inside, and neighbors slowed their cars when they passed, not because they wanted to stare, but because everyone knew the story had changed. My father's name disappeared from repair jobs around town. People who used to trust him with keys and back doors stopped calling. My mother stopped serving coffee after church. No one asked her to. No one needed to. The room made space around her now, the same way it used to make space around me. Brandon's garage closed before Christmas. The sign came down on a windy morning, and the money behind it became part of the review. Karen helped me regain control of what was left of Grandma Evelyn's trust. Not all of it. Enough. Enough to pay for counseling. Enough to move without asking permission. Enough to breathe in rooms no one else controlled. Mrs. Delgado was the first person I visited after I left the hospital. She opened her door in slippers and cried before I did. Her house smelled like soup and laundry soap. She held both my hands, careful around the burns, and said, "I heard you. I believed you." I carried that sentence home like medicine. Maya helped me move into a smaller apartment in Columbus. 3rd floor, old radiator, thin walls, a kitchen window that stuck when it rained. The first time a neighbor hammered something next door. I dropped a glass in the sink. The sound cracked through my chest, but the next morning, I stood in front of my window, unlocked it, and pushed until cold air entered the room. It opened. Not easily, but it opened. I stayed there with my hands on the frame, letting November air sting my face. For a long time, I had thought survival meant getting out once. Now I knew better. Sometimes survival meant opening the same window every morning until your body believed it could. Months later, I placed Grandma Evelyn's small fern on my windowsill. Morning light touched the leaves, the glass stood open, and the cold air moved through the room without asking permission. I still heard the recording sometimes, my own voice, the crackle on the line, the proof that I had not imagined the cage, but the window stayed open. Family does not get to lock the exits and call your panic confusion. Love does not need a sealed room to keep you close. If you've ever had to fight to be believed, share your story in the comments and subscribe for the next story.